everybody. Good afternoon. This is Read with Miss Beth, and I am Miss Beth, so we're all in the right place. We're here in my living room on my cozy couch this afternoon, ready to share a story. First, I want to touch base really quickly and let you know that if you haven't gotten in or gotten online to download your summer reading log or to pick it up from the building, you're still able to do so. We have two different reading logs. One is for our younger kids, so from newborn to fourth grade, and that always confuses people a little bit because they say, well, my baby can't read, but your baby can be read to, and any child that can read or is read to qualifies to take part in our summer reading program. And yes, we do have prizes for our little people too, so no worries there. And we say fourth grade because a lot of our middle schools are starting at fifth grade, so fifth through 12th grade are in the teen program, and they have their own unique prizes associated with that. But that's really up to your discretion as parents. If you want your kids, and you know your kids are reading stuff in the children's section still, and they're in fifth grade or even in sixth grade, doesn't matter. You can have them participate in any program you want. The goal is to get your little people to read. That's our goal, and so we try and incentivize that and make it as much fun as possible. And then starting August 3rd through August 29th, you can collect your prizes for reading. So if you've been keeping track at home, continue to do so and get those reading logs so you can mark those and make it official. So we have been reading some really great books all summer long. I'm just going to fire up my iPad because I went to sleep. And this week's book is Beginner's Welcome. It is by Cindy Baldwin, and it is published by Quill Tree Books. And I just want to say thank you to both Cindy Baldwin and Quill Tree Books, the publisher, for allowing us to read these books to you, to read this book to you. Without the author's permission and that of the publisher, it makes it really difficult for us to keep our programming where we like it to be. So we've kicked it up a notch, and our department head, Miss Tanisha, did all that legwork and got all those permissions for us. So thank you to her too. All right, folks, I have to be quick and on time today, which is a struggle for me when I'm reading. I lose track of time and want to keep going because I'm actually working in the building this evening. Yes, we are open for curbside in the mornings, but we are open in the building in the afternoons. And starting today, as I look down, I'm just forwarding to the beginning of the book. Starting today, we are actually going to be open till 6. So all of our peeps that work till 5 can scooch into the library and grab their things before they head home for the night. So I got to do this thing so I can get in there and hopefully see some of you. Let's start off with the beginning at chapter 1. I woke on the first day of 6th grade to the sound of Mama crying in the bathroom. Before my eyes were all the way open, I was reaching over to my nightstand to grab the 2-headed quarter that sat there, cool to the touch, even on this warm, late August morning. The kind of morning where summer had its claws so deep into everything, it felt like it might never let go. Those 2 faces of George Washington were twice as shiny as a regular coin from rubbing. First Daddy's big fingers and then my smaller ones. He'd carried that magic show quarter around in his pocket as long as I could remember. Now, you know, quarters have the head on one side, and then when you flip it, it's got a different picture stamped on it, a different one for each state. But she has a special coin for magic tricks, and it has George Washington on both sides. It always pays to carry your own luck, Al, he'd say whenever he showed it to me, flipping it from heads on one side to heads on the other. You never know when it might come in handy. Annie Lee? Mom's voice was tight and stretched, but at least she wasn't sniffling anymore. Mama had cried every single morning for more than 2.5 months. I'd hardly cried at all. Sometimes it felt like Mama had sucked up all the space for grieving in our family, so there wasn't any left for me. A moment later, Mama knocked on my bedroom door. You awake in there? Yeah, I said, and closed my fingers around the corner. By the time I was dressed, the two-headed coin in the pocket of my denim shorts where it belonged, Mama had scrubbed all the tears off her pale face and turned the fan on loud in the bathroom so that there was only the tiniest hint of Daddy's aftershave in the air. She'd washed the sink out, too, so I couldn't see the foam and stubble that appeared there every morning like clockwork. "You excited to start your new school?" Mama asked while I dragged a hairbrush through my hair. Every year I was alive, my hair moved further away from yellow and closer to that not really a color that happens to blonde hair when it gets bored. I shook my head. "Do you have your key to get in here after school is over?" "It's in my backpack already." "Good. And you remember which bus you're on?" "I'm almost 12, Mama." Mama sighed. "I just hate knowing that I won't be here when you're home from school. I don't like thinking about the things that could. Never mind. I'm sure you'll be fine." Every day for the last 6 weeks, I'd been treated to her worries about leaving me alone. "A latchkey kid," she'd said the day she'd gone full-time at the housekeeping company. "I'm sorry, Annie Lee. I never wanted you to have to fend for yourself like this. I wish there was any other choice." Now Mama sighed again, something she did almost as much as crying these days. Sometimes I thought maybe it was just the way she breathed now, like the world was pressing too hard on her shoulders and she could never get a deep enough breath. "I'm going to go figure out some breakfast." She scooted past me out the bathroom door and was gone before I could blink, just like she'd never been there at all. When I came into the kitchen, she was crying again. Not the regular sniffly tears that appeared every morning when she got up and found the bathroom smelling so strongly of Daddy that he could have left it seconds before. These were big, shocked sobs that shook her whole body. She was standing with one hand over her mouth, her skin white, staring at the kitchen table. It was a little table, the only size that would fit into the little kitchen of our little apartment, and it was so old and dinged up that you couldn't even tell what color the stain had been in its old life. Before Mama and I had found it during the Independence Day sale at the Goodwill. And on top of it, smelling like sugar and memories, there was a box of old-fashioned donuts from the whole shebang. My daddy had been dead for over 83 days, and still, somehow, there was a box of the exact same donuts he brought home on the first day of every new school year since I started kindergarten, sitting right there on our kitchen table. Whoa, did you see that coming? I did not see that coming. Honestly, when I first read this book, I was floored. I would totally freak out. First off, we found out that the dad has died and they're all alone, just Annie Lee and her mom. But they wake up every day and there's shaving cream and stubble and mess left in the bathroom sink. Now, I can tell you, because my husband is here with me and my adult son, that there is shaving cream and stubble in our sink all the time because, for whatever reason, they seem incapable of cleaning it up. But they're both still here and alive, and her dad is not. And yet there's shaving cream there. Isn't that weird? And what about these donuts? How'd they just appear out of thin air? How does that happen? I just don't know about this. This is so troubling to me. But on a lighter note, is there something your family does every day on the first day of school, or every year on the first day of school? Do you have a certain something that you always do, or like a ritual or a way you celebrate or anything like that? I sometimes would get my kids donuts. Sometimes we would just have whatever they wanted. A couple times we would go out to eat for breakfast, but you have to get up super, super, super early to do that. So they were old when we did that, probably high school age. But when they were really little, I made them do this thing, and I bet your parents make you do this too. We took a picture every time out in front of the car or out in front of the house, and I measured them. I had a piece of trim by our back door every year. We did that on the first day of school. I wonder what your traditions are. I bet you have some. You just have to think about it a little bit. Chapter 2. The apartment was quiet and dark when I got off the school bus that afternoon. My phone, the cheapest plastic flip phone that Mama could find at Walmart, buzzed from my backpack with Mama's check-in text. I imagined her paused in the middle of vacuuming, her bubblegum-colored Mary's Maid's polo smudged with dust and sweat, pulling out her phone the second she knew I'd be back. You get home today, okay? Yep, I typed back. I'd asked for a phone for what felt like years before Daddy died, but he and Mama always agreed that I was too young. But afterwards, when Mama had to call her boss at the cleaning company and say that she wanted to work full-time as many days a week as they had available, she'd given me the phone. For emergencies, she'd said, and to let me know you're safe. She hadn't even let me give Monica and Meredith my phone number back when we were friends because she didn't want them running up my texts. My phone buzzed again. Good. See you in time for dinner. Stay inside. XOXO. I closed it and stuck it into the pocket of my shorts. That was the one good thing about that phone. It was nice and small. I left my backpack where it was on the doormat and went right back outside, making sure I'd locked the door behind me, my silver fold-up scooter tucked under my arm. I turned my brain off so that it couldn't think about Mama's instructions to stay inside or how panicky she'd be if she knew that what I was actually doing. Mama, who had stayed with me at the bus stop that morning until the bus came, even though I was 11 and not 6, Mama, who checked the locks on the doors 3 times when we went to bed and never let me open the windows in case I forgot to lock them. Mama, who'd always been a little anxious before Daddy died, but lived in a constant state of terrified these days. I unfolded my scooter when I got down the wrought iron stairs of our apartment complex and hopped on. I didn't worry about scootering through the probably not so safe parts of town by myself the way I knew Mama would have. I was good at being invisible. I knew how to stay small so that eyes would slip right past me like I wasn't there at all. If I concentrated hard enough, if I closed my eyes and imagined that I had Harry Potter's invisibility cloak, I was pretty sure I could make myself fade away into the world around me so that my skin took on the look of grass or brick or cinder block. Kind of like a chameleon, right? Yeah. So that nobody looked over and saw Annie Lee Fitzgerald at all. Invisible people couldn't be seen, and people who couldn't be seen couldn't be hurt. My heart had cracked right down the middle the day that Daddy died, and then cracked all over again when me and Monica and Meredith drifted apart and stopped talking. I couldn't take any more cracking. Durham was a big city, one that sprawled out over so many miles that it felt like 2 or 3 cities all joined together. There was a little bit of everything in Durham, shining shopping malls surrounded by new subdivisions where every house had the same floor plan, endless suburbs that stretched out as far as the eye could see, towering glass buildings that glittered in the sun. And then there was where we lived, in old North Durham, where everything was either old and falling down or old and fixed up to be trendy. Where Mama and I lived was definitely the first kind of old. The sidewalk I rode down, the one that ran along our road, was broken up and lined with weeds and sagging Victorians wrapped around with chain link fences. It only took a minute of riding for the houses to disappear and give way to squat auto shops and churches with weather-stained signs and bars on their windows. I rode along our street until it widened and then widened again, and I reached the part of town with cute little coffee shops and imposing office buildings, and stores where rich hipsters went to buy groceries. I stopped when I got to Brightleaf Square. Brightleaf was a mall, but not the kind shoved into the middle of a parking garage and filled with Sears stores and smoothie shops. It was built into a pair of old red brick buildings with a fancy courtyard between them. Once, when Daddy and I came here for ice cream, he explained where the buildings came from and how they'd been around longer than even Gramps Fitzgerald had been alive. A long time ago, before there were regular roads or anything like that in Durham, the whole city was ruled by people who grew tobacco and made cigarettes, Daddy had said, dragging his spoon through his rocky road and licking it off. The whole ice cream store smelled like cream and sugar, which meant it was one of Daddy's favorite places because he loved anything sweet. You know, before DARE or anything like that, before doctors knew that smoking caused cancer. Anyway, all these old buildings around town, they were tobacco warehouses. He paused then, looking at me with an excited gleam in his eyes that I always thought of as his teaching face. If you try hard enough, Al, I swear that when you're wandering around this mall underneath the high wooden ceilings and past the big tree trunk beams and through the golden light falling through the window glass, you'll be able to catch a glimpse of those olden day tobacco workers hurrying back and forth to the sound of horses' hooves thumping on the dirt roads outside. Now, I hurried past the ice cream shop so I couldn't smell that cream and sugar smell, trying to close my heart to all those memories of Daddy that hurt like needles. I stopped a few minutes in front of a shop with a curling golden writing on the window that said, Queenie's Cuts in big letters and Queenie Banks, proprietor, in smaller ones. Queenie was inside with one of her employees and a couple of customers cutting a blonde woman's hair with fingers that dipped and dived like jumping fish. It was hard to miss Queenie. She looked the way I imagined a goddess must look. Big and beautiful, with deep brown skin and purple streaked hair done up in braids. Queenie was the opposite of the person I turned myself into. I didn't think there was a magic cloak in the world that could turn Queenie invisible, and not just because she was what older ladies referred to as plus size. You couldn't help seeing Queenie because even watching through the glass of her shop window, love rolled off her in waves. It was there in the way she smiled at her customers, in the way she talked to them in a loud, joyful voice when they were excited, and a quiet, comforting one when they were sad. It was there in the way she hugged them as they left, like they were her best friends. I touched the ends of my own hair. I'd never had a haircut in a salon like Queenie's. Mama had always cut it in our kitchen, draping me with a purple plastic cape and cutting with slow, careful strokes. Her haircuts looked good, though. She could do cool layering and things like you might see on the cover of 17, even if it took her a long time to finish. Sometimes when she was done cutting and stood back to look at her work, she'd say, You know, Annie Lee, way back before I married your daddy, I always used to think I'd go to beauty school. Why didn't you? I'd asked her once, grumpy at hearing that same story over and over again. Why don't you just go now? Mama shrugged. I met your daddy, honey, and then you came along and kept me busy. And besides, Daddy's teaching salary is never going to be enough for me to stop working part-time for Mary's maids. I just don't have the time or the energy or the money to do both. Would Mama have been like Queenie if she'd gone to beauty school the way she'd meant to? I couldn't imagine her laughing and grinning the way Queenie did with her customers. Daddy had always been the laughing one in our house, while Mama was quiet and serious. But still, if I squinted hard enough, it was like I could almost see her through the glass there, a black apron tied around her waist. Well, Annie Lee is having a very adventurous day, don't you think? Her mom thinks she's at home. Her mom told her to stay home, and she said she would, and she answered her text, and then she left the house right away. Would your parents flip out if you did that? Yeah, I would flip out if my kids did that. Do you think she's going to get caught? I don't know. I don't know. And her parents, her dad sounds like he laughed and joked all the time, and her mom is serious and worries about things. Are your parents like that? Do you have one parent that's serious and worries or thinks things through more so than the other one? And do you have one that's just always in a good mood and is happy or quick to make a joke? I think my kids would probably say I'm the worrier, but I did joke with them. But I'm probably the worrier and their dad's probably the jokester. I didn't have two parents growing up. I only had the one, so I don't know what that's like. And I think my mom did both. She was both, depending on how much grief we gave her and if we decided to sneak out. Don't sneak out. All right, let's see what she's up to, this crazy Annie Lee. Chapter 3. It was while I was watching Queenie that the music began. It was quiet at first, piano notes floating up to me in wisps and whispers that made the hair stand up on my arms. I hadn't heard the sound of a piano in months. After Daddy died, Mama had sold the little upright piano tucked into our living room, along with her house and nearly all the other furniture we owned. When I protested that she couldn't sell the piano, Mom had scowled. You made the choice not to care about that piano a year ago, Annie Lee, she'd said. When was the last time you even touched it? The music got louder and stronger until it had wrapped its fingers all the way around me. And without even knowing what I was doing, I turned and was following the sound. I followed it all the way to a shining grand piano set up in the middle of an atrium near the building's front entrance. At first, I thought that there was a skylight letting in sunlight to pool and dance in the air above it. But then I realized it was the opposite. The light was rising up off the keyboard, swirling with gold and silver and flecks of other colors too. Like the music coming up from the piano was so powerful, it couldn't help but burst out of the keys in more ways than one. I stood still in the shadow of a pillar, just watching and watching, my eyes and ears and every part of me swallowing that music like water. Music had been one of Daddy's things. That was what Mama called Daddy's hobbies, usually in an exasperated voice when she tripped over a pile of sheet music or found the kitchen table colored in playing cards and a book of magic tricks. Fitz, you've got too many things. Wouldn't it be better to just take the time to be really good at one thing? Daddy always laughed and said that there were too many exciting things to learn in the world to confine himself to just one. Still, music had been a part of him in a way that the others hadn't, like it was written into his DNA as much as his red hair or the light brown eyes we shared. Eyes, Daddy said, were the color of the Eno River after a flood. And piano had been his favorite. Annie Lee, there's only one instrument that can switch in a heartbeat from Bach to John Denver and make them both sound amazing. Only one instrument that can rival a whole orchestra all by itself. He could play a little and loved to plunk around on our piano, but he quit taking lessons when he was a kid and never had the time or money to start up again as a grown-up. It was one of the reasons he'd been so upset when I gave it up last year. Now, listening to the notes echoing through the wooden rafters, watching the golden lights dancing in the air like music made visible, I shivered. Daddy had never been able to play as well as the man who was hunched over the keyboard, hands moving up and down so fast I could hardly follow them. Still, it was like Daddy was all around me, like if I closed my eyes, I could feel his warm arms pull me close and hear him sing his favorite song, the one he'd named me for, Annie's song. Sometimes when he was in an especially good mood, he'd call me his mountain springtime or his desert storm after a song. Part of me, the part that had buried the first day of school donuts in the trash this morning and had eaten a Pop-Tart that tasted like dust instead, that part wanted to run away from anything that felt so much like Daddy, anything that sent the sharp pain of missing him into my heart. But the music, the lights, they held me there. I'd seen things that couldn't be explained before, of course. There was no way to wake up every morning to stubble in the bathroom sink when nobody had been in there all night and not think magic every now and again. But that was a sad kind of magic, while this was pure happiness, dancing there above those piano keys. Sometimes the man played fast and thundery, and then the light above him sparked and spun and turned blue and purple and deep sea green. But other times he played gentle, so quiet and still that the notes reached right inside me and made me feel calmer than I had in months. And the colors faded and became pure and simple and sweet as the end of a summer's day. I lost track of how time was moving, standing there watching and listening. The seconds stretched out so thin I could almost see the light through them. When the pianist finally stopped, the whole building felt hushed, like it wished he kept on playing forever. And the piano man was looking right at me. He was old, with a mostly gray beard and pale skin like the bark of a birch tree by my apartment, as thin and saggy as if it had seen 100 years of sun and wind. The baseball cap he wore was ripped at the brim, loose threads waving as he moved. His faded blue eyes looked right into mine, like he could see me, invisibility cloak and all. "Hey there," he said, and his voice sounded like a tree bark too, rough and scratchy. "What's your name, girl?" My heart gave one enormous thump, and before my brain had even caught up with my ears, I was turning around and running to the glass door and the sizzling August heat outside. What do you think, guys? Why do you think the old guy spooked her? What do we think that's about? Do you think it was really about the gentleman playing the piano? Was it about the pianist? Was it about missing her dad? Was it about a memory of her dad and how he liked music? I don't know. I'd like to tell you, but I'm not going to give it away. I know this book seems sad, right? And it is a sad thing when we lose a loved one. It really is. It is super sad. That's not entirely what this book is about. Rather than thinking of it as a sad book, I'd encourage you or challenge you to think of it as a mystery. What's going to happen in this book? What is Annie Lee going to do? And how is her mom going to stop crying? So, shoes on and get off my couch and head into the Helen Warner branch. So I hope I get to see some of you. And if I don't get to see you today, I hope you'll stop in. We're open at both locations. We're doing curbside every morning, open to the public in the afternoons. We can't tell you how much we love seeing all your shiny, smiling faces, and we just miss seeing you so much. I really hope you liked this book today and that you keep reading, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.